Hello, hello, and welcome back to the only podcast where last week Max and Luke proved they knew a little about skeletons and crews, and now we know a lot more about Skeleton Crew. I'm Matt.
I'm Luke.
And I'm Max.
This is Force for On.
Did you give the signal? Sorry, I missed it. Oh, there it is. Hello and welcome. We just watched episodes 1 and 2 of Skeleton Crew, and I loved it. Guys, what'd you think? Up front, broad strokes. Do we like it?
Yeah, it was way significantly better than I thought it would be, and I think I was the one that was most excited about the show coming into it.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun. I was kind of saying in between the episodes, right after we finished episode 1 and started going into episode 2, I feel like this is the good tone and size, scope of story for a Star Wars TV show in general. I feel like a lot of the other TV shows, they try to go too big, and it's like, you should have just done this as a movie because now you're just stretching it out. Whereas I feel like this makes more sense for story-wise, as far as what we've seen so far for a TV show, because I'm really liking this so far for a TV show. I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think there's a slightly more positive way to spin that without throwing stray bullets at Kenobi and Boba Fett, who have nothing to do with
I
this
didn't
right
name
now.
drop anything there.
We all know who you were talking about. The Acolyte, Ahsoka, and The Mandalorian are all very well structured as a TV show, and they don't need to be movies. So it's just
The
we don't need
Acolyte
to get
is-
into it right now. But
Yeah, I disagree with some of that
this is a-
still, but that's fine. That's fine.
This is a good show. I agree.
It is.
Yes.
I like it a lot.
is
I'm
a-
enjoying it a lot. I think it's a lot of fun.
It's a great show that is structured like a TV show. I think is the biggest thing Max is saying too, though, is like it feels like a TV show where you're ending with cliffhangers that then are resolved. You're setting things up very. We were talking about it during the episode a little bit, where you know that Wim knows a shortcut because he sees the girls take it earlier in the bus ride. So things like that are like very clear. I mean, I guess story structure things in general, but then to have it in the TV show to pay it off later on with this type of show playing the Amblin style is so smart.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I was very honest before the show came out that I was not really looking forward to it, in a sense that it's not like I was going to watch it and I'm sure love it, but I wasn't like anticipating it like I was with the Acolyte for the Jedi and High Republic angle, or like Kenobi or Ahsoka for the returning characters angle. I had a healthy degree of optimism for the show, but I wasn't like craving it, and I already am for next week. This solidify right under me, and I cannot wait to see the episode 3.
I think that's what Star Wars should do, honestly, more often, is because like that's in '77, right? Star Wars is this brand new thing that is like inventive, and then they kind of do the same thing with the prequels, where it's a whole new era, just like costumes, everything. And so I think that's what you have almost no expectations going into it. I think that's what they should do more of. Like, I want to see more characters that we know. I want to see more building those worlds out. But this is great, and I feel like also having this little, again, in this huge galaxy. This feels like in the MCU when they're like, oh, it's like Thanos, but then it's like, what about like Spider-Man or like Daredevil, where it's like more street villain or street heroes? That's what this kind of feels like, and the fact that it's like, oh, here's a city or here's a planet that apparently is just a myth, right? And these kids are just per chance from it. There's no story that we know that is connected to anything. It's like that is just a fun thing we found out in the second episode. That is like a great little tease that is self-contained. And will get resolved at some point and become a bigger threat. But like that's a great thing. You introduced it so naturally. It just is like, oh, this is brand new. It feels great. It's very exciting.
So despite that brand new and feels great and fresh angle, it did start with an opening crawl and then basically a recreation of A New Hope's intro, which I'm not knocking.
Yes.
I did love it. But what did you guys think about that? Are we destined to have opening crawls in every piece of Star Wars media forever?
I hope not, because I was just rewatching Solo, and every time I watch Solo now, I think about what we said on the podcast about how that's just like such an unnecessary. You get no information from the opening crawl in Solo, and as I was reading this one too, it was kind of the same thing. It was like, okay, we're in the New Republic era. This is shortly after the events of Return of the Jedi. That's basically all we need to know based off of the crawl. Everything else we kind of put together within the first 2 seconds of the following scene. But I like it. I mean, it's becoming a tradition, obviously, that they're doing this even in TV shows, but it's not a crawl. It's just words on screen.
Exposition.
But
this
yeah,
one,
it's just how they're starting now. So at this point, I'm just kind of coming to expect it. I don't know. I mean, I also keep saying that they need to pick a lane and stick with it. So at this point, yeah, just keep doing it.
I think they should.
It's the last
continue.
3 shows now. That's Skeleton Crew, The Acolyte and Ahsoka. Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi did not have crawls. So it is sort of consistent in the sense that it's been the last 3, but not the first 3. So it might be their MO moving forward. I didn't have a problem with it. I do think, similar to The Acolyte, when we talked about it back then, you need to set the time setting. There's no way to do that naturally without breaking a fourth wall and saying, like, this is, like, hey, audience, this story takes place at this point in the timeline.
I think beyond that too, though, it sets the stage. Like it honed in on the pirate aspect, and you're just like, oh, okay, interesting. I know we're going to see pirates, but how does that relate? Now it makes so much more sense after seeing the first 2 episodes that it is the secret city that is supposed to be full of treasure. It's like, oh, that's how the pirates relate. So it just, to me, it's like it sets the stage, and it's kind of a question in this episode of like, okay, cool, how do the pirates relate? They're going to run into them, but it's a little deeper than we even thought, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah,
And
it does set the stage very well, but I wouldn't say that's necessary. But because
True.
the timeline setting is necessary, might as well kill 2 birds with 1 stone,
Yes.
you know?
Versus bad exposition by somebody.
No, I agree with Matt. I think, well, I guess necessary. I don't know. I
Yes.
agree with Matt. I think it's necessary because I'm also kind of thinking at it from the angle of a lot of speculation. You know, I've obviously watched all the teasers and trailers for this show, you know, in the lead up to it, whereas the show itself has to be designed for people who just say like, oh, hey, let's just check this out real quick and see what it's like, you know? So obviously they do have to kind of set the stage and the timeline and all that stuff. So I guess to me, I'm coming at it from a meta perspective where I'm just like this is, I know this. It's actually the only thing I know about this show. I've known it for like 6 months now, but you're right. For people who are just kind of coming into it, I guess it does need to be there. So I take it back. I'm thinking out loud. Yes, we need to have crawls and everything.
I think they
Crawl
should
positive
have.
podcast. All right.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think they
I'm
should have
moving
maybe
over
an
to the
alt.
side.
Good. Just as an alt, they have a character that's in every single TV show that blatantly walks by stating information. So you know. They're like, oh, Din Djarin just saved
34 ABY. Like a play or like a boxing round 1.
That's actually funnier. I was just picturing some guy walking by, like, talking to his friend about some, like, recent news that happened. Like, oh, yeah, Alderaan just blew up as he walks by. Like, yeah, the kid's name's Grogu as he walks by. Like,
Moving on from the crawl, we get that homage, we'll call it, to A New Hope. It was similar thematically and what's the word for the exact scenes recreated with slightly different pieces.
A shot
Like,
for
you pan
shot
down
remake.
you pan down from the opening crawl to his planet, and then a ship covers the screen. But I love it when they just remake Star Wars with better effects and cooler action. So I'm all for it. That
It
was
was
so
great.
much better than A New Hope because it's 50 years older or 50 years newer. The action was more compelling. The space action was awesome. Those guys out flying through space and like setting charges on cannons out on
yes. Yeah.
out on the outside of the ship with
Which people will
the
complain
spacewalkers
about.
and stuff.
So let's get just used to that. If people are going to go Last Jedi route, they will complain about
Oh yeah,
people.
they'll complain about that, and I bet the kids were
But it
shit
was-
actors according to their standards too. They'll complain
It was-
about that.
No, there's no
I
way. They
didn't
were
have a
so
problem.
good. I loved them.
Really?
And also, the guy got shot in the eye. Like, it was actually brutal. And the thing I
He
liked
got shot
about
in the eye and survived it. He
I
tanked
did
it.
not understand
That-
how that happened.
Oh my
You
gosh,
see-
the Ishi-Tib species just got so much more complex to me because they got shot. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's obviously not your brain. Like your eye is like detached from your head out there. Why
Yeah.
can't you just get shot and tank it like you're getting shot in the hand? Like you don't have an eye anymore, and that sucks. But, that blew my mind. That was so
Same.
cool.
It was also one of those things that I think it was such a smart way to open up the show because you know it's going to be very much in the vein of the original trilogy in the fact that the creatures are super wacky and weird. Like the wolf
Yes.
guy. Like, I'm so glad that we just
Brutus.
get a wolf guy. Brutus. What a good name for that character. But, like, it just looks like a higher level of, like, a Halloween mask. And that's what all the
Yeah.
characters to me felt like. And I was like, this sets the stage and the tone for that perfectly. It's like, oh, yes, A New Hope. You remember that movie? You're going to love this.
Yeah, they did a really good job of invoking that late 70s, early 80s spirit too, like all throughout the entire show, like the aesthetic that they have throughout just like the houses in these neighborhoods and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It has,
The
like-
architecture is crazy.
yeah.
The Two-Eyed Grand and Urkel were also pirate members, which was The two Ed Grand, I mean, I don't have much else to say about that guy that I didn't say about the Ishitib. You get shot in the head, your eyes are detached from your head, they're more vulnerable or less vulnerable. Interesting. It's more likely that you see people with eye patches when they have their eyes so far away from their head. I feel like I'm really harping on that, but it was so cool. And then
No, there
Urkel
was a lot.
has a eye enhancer or something. Doesn't look like an eye patch, but that's kind of weird that Urkel's in this. I'm not against it.
I mean, I like. He's funny. I like him. He's good in that.
Yeah,
New York
yeah.
Andre
It's
episode.
definitely. I feel like we got to mention it. I mean, he didn't do anything yet. Basically, He
Correct.
had
I
a
was about to
couple
say
lines.
it's still too early to make any sort of judgment on it. I feel like
There's-
we
He's
gotta let
gotta
it
be
cook
a
for a
good
couple
guy,
more
right?
episodes.
Right. There's still a chance that a few episodes from now we won't say, "Hey, there's Urkel again." We'll like recognize him as a character in this show. But as of now, I don't really. And then, so the opening sequence was great, and then we start getting our introduction to the kids and what's the planet called? At-Aten.
At-Aten.
At-Aten. Starts out with Wim eating cereal with blue-green milk. I mentioned this while we were watching it. Did that jump out at you guys? Because like whenever
Yeah, of course.
there's milk, it's like, oh, is it gonna be blue? Is it gonna be green? It was somewhere in between.
Yes, I'm excited for Galaxy's Edge to announce the new flavor next week.
Purple milk.
It's the perfect
No,
metaphor
that-
for the show.
I think that's the thing too, though. Is like when for something about it that just felt so natural. That's like, yes, this kid would be eating cereal, and then it just is such a natural way to be like, look, it's this new interesting milk, and he pours it in the cereal. It's like, oh, it just works so well because it builds out the
Yeah.
lore in such a weird way. There was other lore things we were talking about, not to jump ahead, but like just the same thing when
Was
they're
it Neil and
saying-
Wim playing lightsabers? That was awesome.
even the action figures in the beginning. It's like, oh, that was us. We did that. You know, like that is like so good.
Very rarely, I watch everything with subtitles, and very rarely, like it happens a lot when I watch comedies. I don't watch that many comedies. The subtitles kind of ruins the joke or the moment and takes me out of it. And that was an example because the subtitle said Sith voice, and then it was like him pretending to be the bad guy, and I was like, oh, Sith. Now, hold on, I can pause the show for 10 minutes and think about that implication. He knows about the Sith, but I mean that's not a secret to the show. Like he obviously knows about the Jedi and the Sith, and that's a big plot point. But I just got it a little bit early, and it got my wheels turning too fast, too quick. But
It's going to get everyone's wheels turning because the whole question now is like, what all is known about their planet? Because clearly not much.
Yes.
They've set it up to be like this big myth, legend. These pirates don't even think that it's real. But the people who live there still have an understanding of the galaxy outside of it. I mean, they weren't surprised by planets, stars, starships, starports, or anything like that. They knew about the Jedi.
okay,
I mean, nothing like that. Like it was clearly their first time. Like even when they went into hyperspace, I even said when we were watching it, it's really hard to fathom just how terrifying that would be.
yes,
But I think they have an understanding of the galaxy outside of them. And I think they just kind of live in this secluded planet, and everyone's kind of okay with it.
and it's kind of
it's
spooky,
definitely
though.
giving cult.
Yeah, like Luke mentioned, you mentioned that during the episode when the Fern's mom was talking about the assessment tests and stuff, and it does feel like they're living off by themselves, like on a weird island or something. Like
Yeah.
it's like almost like Scientology, but you don't know you're a Scientologist, like because you don't know what other religions are or something.
Yeah, because they talked about doing the great work, and the great work was
Yes, yeah.
capitalized. So that's a thing there. Like that's something that they believe in. That's not just like they were not just saying like, oh, we do great work here. That is like
Yes.
an actual thing. So they do something on this planet. It's not really the point of the show though, so I don't really know how much more information we're gonna get. I think we're gonna get some, but I kind of like that they kind of added this mystery, but that the show isn't necessarily
Yes.
about that as a mystery. Like it's just an adventure about these kids. Like the story is these kids are missing and they need to get home. And then there's just kind of like this added bonus of this entire mystery that's just been thrown
Yes.
at us too.
But do you think is this a miniseries or a TV show? Do we know technically? I think they're all basically TV shows. Until
It
they're
depends
not.
how well it does.
Talk about this every show. Those
I know.
phrases are made up these days.
That's one of those things though where I'm like, man, like I feel like that if it's a mini series to be amazing at the end of this season, they get back to their planet, and that's kind of where the big battle happens at the end. The pirates end up finding it, and so on and so forth. We kind of end where we begin. They'd be great for season 2 as well, but I feel like that's a nice contained story together. You begin on
And I
at-
pray to
at-
God that is what we're getting is a self-contained one-season story that can end
Same.
on a satisfying
and then
note.
and then
Right,
the characters can go on to do other things in the second
Yeah.
season if they
the way,
choose so.
the question you're asking about miniseries or what's the other option, or
TV show.
TV show. That's basically just, is it going to have a season 2, right? I think there's no way it's going to have a season 2 for practical reasons. Like, wasn't this show made and then the release was delayed several years? Like, these kids have got to be
That's a
15
good
now.
point.
They've all gone through puberty since they shot this, I'm sure.
That's even better.
There's no
though.
way they could
Time
do a
has
season
passed.
2.
Neil has glasses now.
It would be a lot of time passing. I mean, yeah, there's a way to do it, but I'm sure, however, if they were wanting to set up a season 2, they wouldn't want to set up a 5-year break in between season 1 and 2.
Hey, look at Stranger Things.
I was just about to say, if this is successful enough, they can Stranger Things this and just bring
They'll
in
do
these
it.
actors who are now 30 years old and look 30 to play 12-year-olds. But while we're talking about At-Atten, though, because the planet itself, I have a lot of notes on that I think it's really cool. I think it is an homage to the term AT-AT that people use for AT-ATs, because that's always a hotly debated topic in the fandom, is if it's AT-AT or AT-AT. I think it's a little homage to that. Luke disagreed. Matt agrees. Also, we already mentioned that this is a myth of a planet of treasure, or whatever they called it. And they don't make a big deal about it when the dad gives him the money, the credits for his lunch money, until we find out in the second episode that those are Old Republic credits. So, I think they have some sort of understanding of the galaxy outside of them, but they're still using this old currency. I don't like.
It's my understanding that they were members of the Old Republic, and then something happened, and they shunted themselves and cut themselves off from the galaxy 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. I don't know. Because also, when they say Old Republic, I assume it's the Old Republic, like pre-High Republic.
That's what I take it as
the
as
Galactic Republic with Sheev Palpatine and
Old enough
Valorum. Yeah.
where you can't like Google Maps it basically. Like generations have to forgot where this planet was. You can't find your way
Right,
back.
right.
But
Which makes sense, because obviously the ship that was buried that they discover, it's like obviously old, but and I don't want to dive too deep into this. This is like tinfoil hat theory because it's so vague, but there was like ground and shrubbery like growing inside the ship. Like, this is not decades, this is centuries, right? Like, I'm not a geologist. Like, I don't know how well things grow, and I'm not an archaeologist. Yeah, they all do the same thing in my mind. I don't know. I don't do that for a living. I don't know how to
Not a
date
science
things.
man.
It seems older than old, though.
Yeah, no, I
Correct.
agree. I think that's very intentional. I'm very interested to find out more about that, because I like that theory about how whenever the Old Republic started to collapse, they just kind of like shunted themselves in, like you said, and they created this barrier, which is a big part of the planet. Barrier no one really gets in or out is kind of what we're led to believe that is, because their planet seems to be self-contained. Like they said, like everyone works on the planet. They take this test to find out what their job is going to be. So yeah, I think that's very interesting. And
And they all strive to be analysts. So you know it's a cult when kids want to
Yeah.
be analysts.
Not great.
and the last thing I
Dream
wanted
big.
to say about the planet it was actually, Luke, your note that you mentioned about the stars.
Yeah, I noticed it the first time we saw the stars, and Max, you noticed it the second, and it was obviously confirmed when they left. But it was not a star-filled sky; it was a red light grid, and it looked really ominous, like a prison cell. And they broke through it, and then the dad mentioned it in the second episode about the barrier. So it's interesting to think. I mean, the security droids said that no ships are permitted to leave. So it's like, is it keeping stuff out, or is it keeping stuff in, or probably both? And then whoever's at the top, Fern's mom is high to the top. She made that comment that there's not much room for the people at the top, and she's obviously a school administrator or something like it, or government official. But like, how much does she know? Because this has been going on for generations. Is it like they've forgotten why they're keeping the secret? They just keep the secret, and she doesn't know any more about the outside galaxy than her citizens? Or does she know everything, and she thinks it's a good idea to keep hiding everything? I don't know. The show could go in several different ways, and I probably am more excited to see the At-Atten side of the story unfold more than the kids side right now.
That is crazy though, because like that is such a. It really just pulled one over on me, to be honest. Where I'm like, I didn't even think about that, but it's like, yeah, there's security droids literally everywhere. Tunde, which I keep I don't know his name, but Tunde, the dad,
Wim's
Wim's
dad?
is like he's not permitted to be in certain areas. Like there is something weird going on there. Like that's like things that I'm more concerned with what's happening with the characters versus the situation they're in or the setting they're in. But there is a lot actually looking back in the first episode specifically. Obviously, there's a lot of weird stuff, like very culty, very like 1984, like oppression. The book,
Mhm.
not the year.
When
You see,
when
I'm
Wim's
glad
dad
you.
keeps talking about how he has to go to work, it's not like, oh, I have to pick up another shift to pay rent this month. It's more like, I have to go to work or I'm going to get assassinated.
Yes.
Well, I don't know. I didn't pick up that part exactly, but I'm glad that you said it
Really?
because usually they portray these things like you said, like it feels like they're in like a prison or something like that. But usually when they do that, I feel like it feels a little more dystopian. I don't feel like the dystopian aspect of this, of like just like the security droids, I don't think that's that heavy-handed. I feel like if anything, it's like very like idealistic right now. Like this part of the planet that we're seeing like is good, and like they know about the barrier and they want to stay there. So I'm curious if maybe at some point you're going to see like another half of the planet or something, and they're all going to be living in abject
Yeah.
poverty, and then that's when you're going to be like, oh, we need to tear down this barrier or whatever.
I think
Because right
that's
now I'm like, I think everyone knows about the barrier and they're just okay because it seems like they got it pretty good.
But is it one of those
That's-
things where you don't know what freedom is unless you're told what freedom is? Type situation. There is. I feel like there's so
That's
many.
why I
books
don't
and
know what they know
movies-
about the outside galaxy.
That's why I feel like I don't know.
Because
I
they
feel like the
wouldn't.
people at the
If they
top
were
would.
truly being
Yeah.
oppressed, they would limit their information. That'll be a big tell if they know. If they know about the other planets that are out there. But the kids aren't surprised by the stuff that they're seeing right now.
Well, they
Which is
are
why I
though. They
think
They
said
definitely
there's.
have stories.
They didn't think there'd be that many. Remember when they went up and they saw all the planets and stars and stuff, and they were like surprised how vast it was.
Yeah, they
but
were
that's-
just surprised at how vast it was. That's not like they thought that the galaxy was smaller. It's like Rey when she said that she didn't know there was this much green in the whole galaxy. It's just she was sheltered, and it's overwhelming when you see it all at once.
Yeah, we know about space in real life, but if any one of us three ever went into space, I'm sure we would also be overtaken by, you know, the vastness of the void.
I don't.
And
But
sometimes
I feel
when
like
it's really
yeah,
dark.
that makes sense. When people say it's endless, that is what endless looks like.
I think that is what is so brilliant about the design of the show so far is that it is a dystopian setting, but not like a dystopian for our world. It's a dystopian setting for Star Wars, and this would not work in a franchise or universe outside of Star Wars because it is building off of our familiarity with Star Wars for being a certain thing and then flipping that to be more like our world, but that's what's wrong, and
That's
that's the dystopia.
That's
What do you think is
literally blowing
dystopian
my
about it,
fucking
though? 'Cause
mind.
I don't know if
Like,
I would call it dystopian at all.
No, I think it is. I think that's it's like like Stepford Wives or that episode of X Files where everything is perfect, and in the perfectness there's that comes at a cost. Things are being taken away behind the scenes because you don't know because things are so perfect that everything's not perfect. People aren't perfect. Situations aren't perfect. And
But the audience usually sees that, right? I mean, we haven't really seen those
Yes.
cracks yet. I'm not saying we won't. I just
Yes,
feel like right
that's-
now
yeah.
we haven't been shown those cracks.
exactly. And
We
that's the thing
haven't,
is
but
I
it's
think
it's like a
but there's
feeling thing at
hints.
this point, and that
Yes.
feeling is built on our familiarity with Star Wars and how it doesn't feel like Star Wars and how wrong that feels.
I don't think that feeling
it
is
felt-
there.
Really?
Yeah, I think
I mean,
it's a very utopian place. I don't know. I'm not.
I can see both because I'm like
I don't want to fight this point too hard because I think you guys are right, and that's like probably where the angle that it's gonna take and everything. But I feel like right now they've done a really good job of setting at and up to be like this utopia, like beautiful suburb with a nice school. I mean, having to go to work and having these truancy droids to me isn't enough of those cracks to be like, oh, something shady is going on in this planet.
Mhm.
The most suspicious thing is just the barrier in general. But that could
Okay.
not be a dystopia thing. That could just be a self-preservation thing. I mean, we don't know their history or when
Yeah,
they
it could be. It could
buried
just be an
themselves in.
oversized Gungan shield for their whole planet this time.
there's so many I also feel like I could be wrong, they're drawing on some Star Trek-y vibe. I mean, KB looks like Geordi from
No, they wouldn't
from
dare.
Geordi. But they I feel like with the visor and stuff, I mean that's not new to sci-fi, that's not new to anything, but also I feel like that is such a Star Trek storyline where like I feel like a million times the next gen they're like, this place is amazing, and then like in 20 out of a 30-minute episode or whatever. At minute
Mhm.
18, they're like, it's not amazing. Like they're killing the people who are speaking out. Anyway, yeah, I don't want to get too hung up on that because the show was so good beyond that. That's just in my subconscious now, thinking about all that stuff.
Yeah, let's talk characters because three of the kids are amazing. Love them very much. Didn't see that much out of KB yet. Still kind of surprised every time she opens her visor and I see her eyes.
She doesn't
we
need
saw
to,
everyone's
though. She's got the
family.
cool thing.
Neil is a cooler design than her, but we still know a lot about Neil. I don't dislike KB.
design.
Don't get me wrong. Oh, Elephant Boy over Sunglasses Girl.
That's just
Yeah,
weird to hear
cooler
you describe a
design.
human as being a design. You would take literally any alien over a human.
Probably, but we'll get back to that at a later date. I mean, I'm not bashing on KB. I mean, she was obviously developed less in these first 2 episodes, and I'm sure she will be further developed in the future episodes. And I don't mean to sound negative because Wim, what's the girl's name? I forgot it again. Fern with an F because Vern is a High Republic character that kept messing me up. And Neil, fantastic characters. Very much excited about all of them. Neil is going. I think. I mean, I haven't checked what the internets are saying about it, the show yet, but I'm sure Neil is going to be the runaway hit of the show. He's just so cute and lovable, right?
Yeah, he is.
I hope so. Yeah.
He's everyone's best friend type character, and done insanely well. He's so funny, and it's. I mean, when he gets stuck, when he's trying to climb down, is so good. Like, there's just so many little moments of him.
I'm curious how they're doing it. How they're doing the mouth on the Neil puppet, because most of the shots are from a high enough angle that you can't actually see his mouth moving, and so then they don't have to do anything. But then every now and again, it's at like a different lower angle or a side angle, and his mouth looks really good. So it's like, are they just doing CG and matching his words for all those parts, or is it actually a puppet that's really advanced and just unfortunately hidden by a trunk?
I think it's CG.
I don't think it's a puppet that's advanced because there's some other puppetry work in the show that is not nearly as good.
Brutus.
Brutus
Wolfman looks a lot like
wasn't the
Wolfman.
worst. What was? I guess the ferryman puppet, but that one was tiny.
Yeah.
That's hard to get right. But
He was
it was
tiny,
small
and
enough that I
they really-
appreciated it.
They really leaned into the fantastical nature of that. They didn't try to make that too grounded.
Correct.
No,
Yes.
it's like Salacious Crumb almost. They're just like, yep, this is Salacious Crumb.
This isn't real, and that's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that sequence when Grogu walks around at the end of Mandalorian season 3, and he's like flopping his feet up and down, and it's like, whoa! You've been setting this up as a very realistic puppet for 3 years now, and all of a sudden he's hopping around on people's head. Like they started out and ended in the same spot with the wee little ferryman.
Wee little ferryman. Yeah.
Which brings me to my next point: is SM33 Irish? Calling people "we"? That's not normal. I'm big
I think
fan of
this
the Irish, so that'd be
Incredibly
exciting.
British. I mean,
He said, I
going
thought
off
he
of
sounded more British than Irish, but
just
British
the
people
Nick-
don't say "we."
I don't know. Nick Frost can say a lot of things. I think it depends on where you're at, where you're from within the UK as well.
I don't know
Sorry,
what
but that's
the difference is between British and just pirate, but I would just describe the accent as pirate. It's just a pirate.
Yeah.
and for
and
SM33.
He doesn't really sound like a robot a whole lot at sometimes. Like they do sometimes like make him a little more mechanical and like kind of do like that robot glitchy stutter. But for the most part, he talks like just a pirate.
Yeah, and sometimes he talks like really old worldy kind of, and sometimes like I have no problems with the writing. There were 2 different instances where I thought, this feels like a video game giving you a hint to get to the next section. When KB said, "Oh, look at this door. I wonder if we follow the power conduit that we can open it." And I was like, "Okay, let's go ahead
Classic
and do that."
KB.
And also when SM33 said, "Okay, you guys go with the ferryman and don't tell anyone or try to keep out of trouble. I'm gonna stay here and fix the ship." Like I don't know, just the way that scene was written.
That's
I
the
was
loading
like,
point for that episode. Like, okay.
That's hilarious.
right.
Right.
That's the unskippable cutscene that comes in every
Yep.
time you have to replay that mission.
And you drop down and you try to go back to the ship, but it won't let you. He's like, "We're not ready yet." Okay, you have to go do the mission now.
But then
SM
almost the same thing when they make it like a D&D game, like a tabletop RPG game, and Wim sees the switch and he's like, "Oh, let's flip this switch. And they're like, no, don't flip the switch. And he's like, nah, I'm going to flip the switch. Like, that's textbook tabletop RPG every time.
Okay, you see a decommissioned droid. He died reaching for a lever immediately. One of the players. I flipped the lever. Are you sure you don't want to look out the area first? No, I flipped the lever immediately. Okay.
Each of the kids was independently a compelling character. I got enough of their setup with the exception of KB, but I'm holding out judgment because it's going to come. But the dynamic between them was also very well done. Mainly the dynamic between Wim and Neil versus KB and Fern. Like the boys and the girl stuff and all the claimsies parts. Like they are running right up against the line of being too cartoonishly childish, but they're not there. It's still just whimsical fun, and I love it.
There's something about where Luke, you're saying this too. I'm thinking so much more deep, I think, than it needs to be right now. And I really don't mean to, because the show is so fun. But I wonder if there is something where KB is going to be like the servant family of Fern or something, and they're like, her mom's gonna be angry if they're hanging out or something, because we don't see her family. We know that Fern is in this like really like wealthy family, presumably, where like striving for the best. So we get everyone's backstory. So I feel like there might be some backstory that we're going to get that's going to kind of be a gut punch a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Did they say anything about Fern's dad, or are we going to get that classic, the parents are going to look for their kids, and along the way, Wim's dad and Fern's mom are also going to fall in love?
Oh, let's hope so. If
they
it's
didn't
based
say
off an
anything about
80s
Fern's
comedy,
dad.
let's go, baby.
I feel like that's what's going to happen, right? Because this is definitely one of those stories where the parents are going to have to band together to try to find the kids too, and then they kind of go on their own little side adventure. Anyway, maybe not, but
Probably.
that was definitely
I
the
hope
vibes
so.
that I was picking up.
And then poor little Neil's parents, who have a perfect little suburban life, are going to get roped into it too. Poor Neil. I just want them to take Neil out of this so that he can go live his happy little life, even if it is oppressive and he's okay with it, living in ignorant bliss. Just keep Neil happy, however he finds it.
I love in the beginning where they're pretending to play lightsabers, and he's like, "My guts are everywhere." It's so funny. Like, it's such a funny little stupid detail, like that you would say when you're playing when you're like 10 years old to like specifically say my guts are falling. It's so good.
One thing I say all the time, Matthew, that you would appreciate from the Detroiters, whenever I have an upset belly, I always say my guts are going nuts.
Oh, such a good show. Underrated.
It's on Netflix now. Highly recommend.
Moving on to the end of episode 2, the pirate fight. That's like the big action set piece for the second episode. The first episode, we had the A New Hope intro. I feel like it's kind of rude to call it that, but that's what it is, and I didn't dislike it for that.
We could also say the Endor scene when Wim is going to school. Just Endor.
Through
basically.
the redwood
Oh
forest.
yeah, the speeder bike. Yeah.
Any Empire references we're missing? Sorry.
I don't.
That was
have time to
rhetorical.
think about that right now. The pirate fight. That I think we were all collectively. We were watching it together remotely, but we were talking, and we didn't say it at the time. But I think we were all kind of dreading the idea of SM-33 kind of talking down this whole pirate gang and all of them just leaving. And then it didn't just break into a fight; it broke into the most epic fight in the whole. I don't know. It broke into a very, very well choreographed and exciting fight scene for what could have been a very average scene of them getting captured. It was awesome. SM-33's abilities were showcased. He's unbelievably powerful, and the danger felt real. The kids were in legitimate harm. Like I wasn't thinking they were actually going to die, but it was real shit.
Yes, and they also set it up really well with when you have the, as Luke said, the whorehouse lady. When we were watching, like when she like sees these kids and then like goes and is like, "You have to leave right now." So those stakes are set up so well. I think just naturally, like, "Oh, you should probably leave now." Then also, I don't want to steal everyone's thunder because you guys both said this, but SM does the Henry Cavill arms when he goes and fights, and that was one of the coolest trailer moments of all time.
That was awesome. He also, it makes more sense than Henry Cavill doing it because his arms are like retractable from his hands to his elbows. He did that when they were flying the ship. He kind of Mr. Fantastic did it. The button was out of reach, so he extended his hand further. What an incredibly useful function for a droid to have, especially one that's piloting a ship that is large.
Yes.
And I
So-
haven't said this yet, but I said it before we were recording. His name is SM-33, so I think it's supposed to be an homage to Mr. Smee, who is Captain Hook's henchman, another famous pirate.
Yeah,
Just throwing
that
that
is-
out there. Getting
I'm on
that
board for that
on the
one.
record.
I like that better than at to at-atten. It's just some sounds.
It's Star Wars sounds.
The Thielen girl, the gatekeeper to the whorehouse, when the Acolyte came out, I was very impressed with their self honesty. What's that word? Their
Self-awareness.
self-awareness, that they said, this Daphne Keene doesn't want to dress up in full body makeup for 4 hours a day before we shoot every day, so she's just going to be half Thielen. This prostitute lady was less Thielen looking than Jecki was, and the possibility exists, like she's a background character, she might have been a quarter Thielen, but I was bummed to see her not in more impressive Thielen makeup and prosthetics.
I didn't think anything of it. I need to compare a real Thielen now to Jecki just to find out what the differences
half.
are between full Thielen, half Thielen.
This one, I think, is like quarter to an eighth Thielen. I think the bloodline's getting pretty muddied at this point.
Bloodline. That's why she's working at the whorehouse. She's impure blood.
Oh, God. There could be a whole story about that. Star Wars is so expansive. I love it. The jailbreak, final sequence of the second episode. It was good. Matt, you said it was very similar to some show from the 80s.
Sorry.
The
what-
mask.
Oh, the
Oh, the mask is that 90s?
Yeah, Mask 90s. Yeah, when
Haven't seen it.
Stanley Ipkiss asks his dog Milo to go get the keys, but he goes and gets the cheese. He steals the cheese off the sandwich instead. Sorry, it took swallow. It's a bit weird. One more thing about the planet being oppressive is there's only one alien species on Ed-Atten, right? Because they all don't understand what aliens look like besides Neil's species.
No, there were Ithorians and Rhodians, and
Oh,
the girl
well,
that
they just-
Neil had a crush on was a different species.
Oh, yes, you're right. You're right.
But that is worth talking about, because I mean, there could be 15 alien species on At-Atten, but if At-Atten is contained to itself for thousands of years, then a 16th alien would look like a completely alien to our recognition. If you're very familiar with these 15 species, and then there's a 16th all of a sudden, yeah, that's an alien, and it's obscure.
Anyway. Sorry, we took us off a weird tangent now.
No, I wanted to talk about that, and I was actually winding down for the episode. Does anyone else have anything to say about the show? Broad strokes, or any specific beats that I missed that you wanted to talk about?
Just predictions. Jude Law, very clearly the captain from the beginning of the first episode. I also think
Yeah.
not a Jedi. I don't know how he did the key trick, but he was very kind of swarmy about the whole, can you keep a secret? So I'm like, I don't think you're force sensitive. I think you have some sort of magnet, and you just kind of pulled a Kumail Nanjiani from Kenobi.
Haja.
See,
His name's Haja.
Haja,
you
thank
think
you.
it's
Something along those lines, because I'm like, I don't know what's going on here, but he's not a Jedi. I'm not getting force vibes from him yet.
I was
I
thinking
still-
that too, but I just have such a small little lizard brain that when he took the key, I was like, oh, I'm sold. He is a Jedi.
Because he made a point of saying like, oh, it's just an illusion. So I'm like, he knows something we don't here. But I don't know. Maybe
No,
maybe
he's
he
trying
is just
to act
force
like a
sensitive.
Jedi, saying
think-
Jedi stuff.
I think it's one of those things where I think it has to be a Jedi because Wim is so into the Jedi, and I think there's going to be some sort of reveal. Actually, right. Wim's gonna meet his hero type situation. The other option is that they know he owes them credits, obviously, and so they put him in jail to pretend to be a guy who's going to help them escape, who's going to help them track down to their home planet, right? So if the bad guys, the pirates, know he's
No, they're not working. They're not in cahoots, I don't think. Like
You think so?
Brutus and Jude Law.
Well,
Jude Law, was he name dropped? Do we know his name? I'm tired of calling him Jude Law.
Captain
I don't think so.
Silvo,
Oh, that's right. He was
Something.
name dropped.
like that.
Yeah.
but like if he
The
because they
former
only
captain.
got one measly credit, right? So they obviously put him in jail. So if they're like, hey,
I thought they were putting him in the airlock. I thought they were floating him.
No, I don't
it was
think
a mutant. It was a mutiny of some sort, but obviously they didn't kill him.
Yeah,
Unless there's
Yeah.
a big
So I
twist
think-
that that's not the captain from the beginning, but I would be shocked if it's not.
yeah,
I
that'd
agree.
be insane. It's his twin brother.
Um,
Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna. Actually, I don't even remember what I was gonna say. So go ahead.
The show is really good. I am
Yeah.
pleasantly surprised so far with the quality. I was
Yeah.
not. I don't know. I had very. I don't want to say low expectations because that sounds rude. I had few expectations. Like it wasn't very high on my radar for something that was going to be outstanding. I'm not going to say it's as good as Andor, but I love it so far for being a fantastic show. Whereas like The Acolyte, even though I think it was very misrepresented as being a bad show and I thought it was a better show than everyone gave it credit for, most of the reason I loved it was for Star Wars and lore purposes and Jedi. And, Ahsoka and Mandalorian maybe not be the most perfectly created shows, but this felt very well made, more like Andor than
Yeah.
most of the other Star Wars shows.
I agree.
We're only
I
2 episodes in, but
1,000%.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see where all it goes and how big they try to take this scale. Because, like I said, one thing I kind of like about this show is that the scale, it just seems much smaller than everything else, which is why I feel like it's a good idea for a TV show. They're not dealing with the Empire or the Rebellion or ideas of self-sacrifice or anything like this. It's just a kids on bike story, and it is, it's amazing, like you said. It's as good as it could possibly be, and I mean that in the best way. I was just hesitant to say that because it sounds like I'm being negative again, and I promise I'm not trying to
Right.
be negative. This show is as good as it could possibly be as of right now, and I'm very excited to find out more. How many episodes is it? It's 8 episodes?
We have 6 left.
I
only.
don't know.
I think it's 8.
Yeah.
We just got 2, so there's 6 more. Okay.
I think this is something that Star Wars should be doing more of, and it's a show that, as us as deep Star Wars lore nerds, are excited to see things expanded and played off and everything. I like these self-contained stories. That feels like a good restart. That feels like a good path forward. I texted you guys this earlier. Is that like my mom is excited for this show and she hasn't seen anything of Star Wars since not Return of the Jedi, since Revenge of the Sith, because she took us, me and my brothers there, in 2005 to go see it. So, like,
She didn't see the sequels in theaters?
Nope, she did not see.
They
The
came out
sequels
at
all.
Christmas. You guys
I-
went and saw them all without your mom while you were all home for Christmas? That's
Yeah, I
savage.
think we saw
we
them
saw them at home
together.
too, Luke. We didn't see them with our mom. Or no, that's not true. We did drag mom because or no,
The one
There's a trailer.
it was the
We
trailer
dragged
that
mom
we
to the
dragged
trailer.
mom to.
Even I know the Taylor lore. Come on.
But we didn't
But
take
it's
our
one of
mom
those-
to see the movies.
I was not living in Cleveland for the Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker.
Max, yeah, Max.
I
and
saw
still
those
did
in
together.
St. Louis and New York.
But like, I think.
And
this-
you were in
for-
Columbus. It's different.
It's different. But having her even being like, "Oh, I'm gonna watch the show," is exciting, and I think a good thing to be like, "Yes, this is gonna not expand to audiences who don't care about Star Wars or anything. It's like this is just expanding storytelling to other people that is gonna be equally as exciting. That takes place in a Star Wars universe. Like I think we can have offshoots like this, and I absolutely love it, and it's obviously they're doing such a good job so far. I am
I
really
agree.
looking forward to seeing the Daniels episode, which I believe is episode 7, which is on Christmas Eve. And the Daniels are the ones who made Swiss Army Man and even better, Everything Everywhere All at Once. And they just won the Oscar 2 years ago, and so this is like their first TV show project, and I'm incredibly excited to see what they do with that episode.
Those are both really weird movies.
Yes,
For
Yeah,
what is
I was not
being
gonna
set
give
up to
my
be a really
opinion on
straight
those.
down the middle of the road show.
I'm very interested in seeing what happens in that episode.
But I was very excited when I saw that text that your mom was excited. I was excited on behalf of Star Wars because I was like, excellent. I feel like that's exactly what they were trying to do. Like that's the demo that they were like, look,
Yes.
you will appreciate this one. Maybe we lost some of that crowd with some of our more recent stuff, but this one's gonna be just like you. Remember when you watched The Goonies as a kid? It's gonna be right up your alley.
And also the second episode was directed by David Lowery, who did like The Green Knight and A Ghost Story. So he's also incredibly weird choice if on paper.
Yeah,
If you're
Green
looking-
Knight was.
Yes, exactly. And that
if
was
that's
like
the
the
movie that I
most
think it was.
with Dev Patel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that movie was weird.
it's not good, I don't like it, but David Lowery is like a direct. That was like his most. That was like his big box office movie, like, or that's like his most like widespread. Like, A Ghost Story is like single shot. There's a 7-minute scene of Runa Mari just eating a pie for 7 minutes. Like, he's very weird, ethereal director, and so but he directed the second episode, I believe.
Second episode was great.
It was exactly. So that's just
I do hope this show expands Star Wars out of this Star Wars bubble that I find myself in online and in most of my real life, because it is refreshing to have conversations about Star Wars with people that aren't huge Star Wars fans. I was talking to a friend a couple months ago, but he likes movies, but he's not like a Star Wars fan, and he said that he didn't like Rogue One because it's so boring. And I think he's so wrong in every single way, but I know damn well he didn't just read that opinion on a YouTube comment and went with it because it's so dumb. It's like, I think you're so wrong, but I appreciate hearing something original.
That is really funny, yeah. I respect the original opinion, but wow, do I disagree with it.
I was also talking with my brother-in-law last week, who's not online very much, but he's a Star Wars fan. He like watches all the movies and shows and plays all the games. And I mentioned that Skeleton Crew is coming out next week. And I was like, oh yeah, you excited for that new show? And he said, oh yeah, Disney Plus sent me an email about it. I saw that. And I was like, is that the only reason you know about the shows? Because you read an email from Disney Plus? And he was like, yeah, they sent me a happy birthday email. And so I opened it instead of just instantly deleting it like we all do with advertisements. But it said like, oh, happy birthday. And so he opened it and he saw a trailer for Skeleton Crew and he watched it, which just really opened my eyes to how I am not the only demographic of people that is just on Reddit or Instagram and sees all the trailers the day it comes out. Like, some people, they obviously keep sending out these emails to us twice a week, so it's reaching an audience that they don't want to ignore.
That's the good news. The good news is this show is going to be loved by the people who do not listen to our show.
I was just gonna say. I was like,
it's all a funnel. It starts with the show, and then it'll come down to us in a couple of weeks.
We get the trickle downs.
Yeah.
We're okay with the bottom of the barrel.
All right. Does anyone have any force for thought to leave us with today?
Sure.
I do.
Oh.
I was watching Rogue One recently, much like Max was last week, and first scene, Galen Erso's hiding out on that farming planet, and Krennic comes and finds him, and I just can't help but feel like hiding somewhere in the entire galaxy is such an easy task. Like, how did you get caught, Galen Erso? You could go literally anywhere. Like, who knew where he was? How did Krennic find you? Tell no one. It's canon and explained in other stories that, like, Saw Gerrera helped him, but we know Saw Gerrera is no rat. Like, I don't know. That seemed like a very easy task to accomplish, and he kind of boofed it. I know he made it, several years, but not even, because Jyn Erso was still a little girl, and she remembers some of her time with the Empire before they went into hiding. So, like, how long did you make it? A few years? You suck at this.
I mean, imagine the government is trying to find you, right? Like, the first thing you have to do is get off the grid. You have to basically stop using any sort of electronic. And I feel like in the Star Wars universe, that's impossible. I mean, he had droids. He had technology, the moisture, vapor, moisture thing, whatever.
Farmhands. Yeah. Droids.
So, I don't know. I think given the resources at the Empire's disposal, it's not crazy for them to eventually find somebody. It is like finding a needle in a haystack a little bit because, it is an entire galaxy, whereas the analogy I'm using is more like just one person hiding in a single country or something like that. But I don't know. I think it makes sense that it will take a long time, but it is not impossible.
I think it's one of those things where he had like a comm device or something, went online, but it was like booted it up, needed to watch some porn or something, and they found him.
Checked his old email and gave away his IP address.
Yep. Exactly.
He forgot to log into his VPN, which brings us to today's sponsor, ExpressVPN.
That's all we have for you today. Let us know in the comments what you thought of Skeleton Crew episodes 1 and 2. Reach out to us on social media. Let us know there. We'd love to talk to you about it. And tune in next week when we watch episode 3. I bet it's amazing also. Thanks for listening.
Same. See you, Sammy.